There's a very specific moment in the connection between a man and a mature woman. It's quiet, it's subtle, and most men completely miss it. It's not the moment she falls in love. It's not the moment she gets excited. It's not the moment she talks about the future. It's the moment she begins to attach. And for a mature woman, attachment does not look the way most people imagine. She doesn't rush forward. She doesn't cling. She doesn't demand reassurance. In fact, she often does the opposite, because a mature woman does not attach through fantasy. She attaches through internal resonance. By this stage of her life, she has already experienced intensity. She has already lived emotional highs and lows. She has already confused passion with chaos. Her nervous system has learned. It has learned to be cautious around men who talk too much, men who explain everything, men who try to secure closeness too fast. So when a mature woman starts to attach, it's not because a man does more. It's because he does less, but with precision. What most men don't understand is this: a mature woman's attachment doesn't begin with what she expresses. It begins with what she holds back. At first, nothing looks dramatic. She doesn't suddenly text more. She doesn't escalate emotionally. She doesn't try to lock the relationship down. Instead, she slows down. This is the first thing a mature woman does when she starts to attach. She slows her reactions. She slows her judgments. She slows her projections because she senses that something deserves attention. She becomes more present in silence, more attuned to details, more sensitive to how a man feels, not what he says. She's no longer trying to be impressed. She's trying to feel safe without losing attraction. And that distinction matters. The second thing she does is even more subtle. She starts testing coherence, not interest. Mature woman doesn't need to test whether a man desires her. She already knows when she's wanted. What she tests instead is whether a man remains consistent over time. She observes. Does he stay grounded when he doesn't get immediate closeness? Does he remain centered during small moments of distance? Does his emotional posture change when things don't go his way? Because a mature woman is no longer looking for intensity. She is looking for self-regulation. When she starts to attach, she becomes extremely sensitive to these micro-signals. Not consciously, not strategically. Her body is reading the situation, and if she senses that a man remains calm, steady, and internally stable, something begins to soften inside her. Her nervous system starts associating him with emotional safety. Not boring safety, living safety. At this point, something internal shifts. She begins thinking about him without trying to, not obsessively, but consistently. She replays certain moments, certain words, certain silences, not because they were dramatic, but because they felt right. And here's where a very specific psychological mechanism begins to activate. When a mature woman starts to attach, she doesn't immediately move closer. She begins to reveal herself carefully, not by oversharing, not by trauma dumping, not by emotional flooding, but through small truths. A feeling she doesn't usually voice, a boundary she states calmly, a preference she doesn't justify. This is a quiet test. She wants to feel whether the man can receive her as she is, and without fixing her, without soothing her unnecessarily, without trying to control the moment. If the man stays present without intruding, her attachment deepens because now her body feels something important. She doesn't have to perform. At this stage, her attachment becomes physical, not sexual, somatic. She feels calmer around him, more grounded, less guarded. And for a mature woman, this sensation is incredibly rare because she knows how easily peace can disappear in relationships. This is also where many men unknowingly sabotage everything. They feel the softening, they sense the closeness, and they accelerate. They talk more, they reassure more, they seek labels. But a mature woman who is attaching doesn't need definitions yet. She needs quality of presence to remain intact, because what she's experiencing internally is delicate. Not delicate because it's weak, delicate because it's valuable. She watches closely. Does the man respect the rhythm? Does he avoid pushing? Does he project fear onto the connection? The more she feels he's not trying to capture her, the deeper her attachment grows. This is the paradox most men don't understand. A mature woman attaches most deeply to a man who does not try to hold her because she feels both free and chosen. At this exact moment, something shifts in her internal priorities. Not dramatically, quietly, she begins giving him more mental space, more emotional availability. Not because she needs him, because she wants him. And often without realizing it, she begins asking herself a new question. Could this man fit into my life without destabilizing it? When a mature woman reaches this point, attachment is already forming. She may not say it, she may not act on it yet, but internally something has settled. Once a mature woman reaches the point where attachment has quietly taken root, her behavior does not become louder, it becomes more intentional. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of mature feminine attachment. People expect visible signs, more messages, more availability, more emotional expression, but maturity doesn't work that way. When a mature woman becomes attached, she does not lose control, she refines it. She begins paying attention to something very specific, how the man behaves when she is not actively close to him. Because proximity is easy, distance is revealing. She watches whether he continues to live his life, whether he maintains his rhythm, his responsibilities, his inner direction. She observes whether his mood depends on her attention, whether his stability collapses when she is less present. This matters deeply to her because a mature woman has already experienced what it feels like to become the emotional center of a man's world, and she knows how heavy that responsibility becomes over time. So when she starts to attach, she tests emotional autonomy, not to reject him but to protect herself. She may create small spaces, subtle pauses, moments of distance that are not meant to punish but to feel. She wants to know, does he remain grounded? Does he stay calm? Does he continue being himself? If the answer is yes, her attachment stabilizes. At this stage, her attachment becomes conscious, though still mostly unspoken. She no longer asks herself whether she enjoys his presence. She begins asking whether she can trust the dynamic. This is a crucial shift, because enjoyment is fleeting. Trust is structural. A mature woman does not want to rebuild her life around someone unstable. She wants to integrate a man without losing herself. And when she senses that a man is not trying to absorb her, not trying to define her, not trying to anchor his identity to her presence, something deepens. She starts including him internally, not in plans yet, not in long-term projections, but in thought. She thinks of him when making decisions. She wonders how he would respond to a situation. She considers his perspective without being asked. This is not dependency. It is regard, and regard is one of the clearest signs of mature attachment. Another subtle shift happens as well. She begins protecting the connection not by controlling it, but by respecting it. She becomes more discreet. She doesn't overexpose the relationship. She doesn't dilute it by discussing it carelessly with others because she senses that something fragile and meaningful is forming. Fragile not because it is weak, fragile because it is new and unforced. Her tone softens, her presence becomes warmer, calmer, more authentic. And if the man knows how to stay in his lane, not accelerating, not withdrawing, not demanding definition, the attachment deepens naturally. This is where many men make a critical mistake. They feel the shift, they sense the opening, and they rush to secure it. They talk about the future, they ask for clarity, they try to name the relationship. But a mature woman who is attaching does not need promises. She needs emotional continuity. She wants to feel that what exists now will still exist tomorrow, and without pressure, without demand, without reassurance. This is where masculine posture becomes decisive. A man who understands mature feminine psychology does not try to lock attachment in place. He lets it settle. He remains consistent, calm, present. He does not change his behavior because he feels her attachment growing. He does not become distant out of fear, nor clingy out of excitement. That consistency creates something rare. Her attachment moves from evaluation to trust. She no longer scans for red flags. She no longer tests reflexively. She begins to rest into the connection. And rest is not boredom. Rest is safety without loss of desire. At this point, attachment becomes somatic. She feels at home in his presence, not engulfed, not consumed, grounded. For a mature woman, this sensation is incredibly precious because she knows how rare it is to feel both calm and attracted at the same time. This is also the moment where a subtle fear can appear, not fear of the man, fear of losing something that feels right. This fear is not anxious, it is vigilant. She becomes careful, attentive, respectful of the bond. She invests without surrendering herself, and that is the hallmark of mature attachment. She is no longer asking whether he wants her. She is asking whether the connection is worthy of continuity. If the man continues to honor the rhythm, if he does not push, does not retreat, does not dramatize, attachment becomes durable. She no longer feels the need to test. She no longer needs control. She knows. And this knowing is quiet. Mature attachment does not announce itself. It does not demand reassurance. It does not create noise. It settles. And that is exactly what makes it so powerful. A mature woman does not attach often, but when she does, it is never accidental. It is because she has felt something rare. A man who can be present without losing himself, stable without rigidity, open without need. A man who does not try to take her freedom and therefore earns her trust. And when that balance exists, attachment does not feel like a risk. It feels like alignment. That is what a mature woman does when she starts to attach. She slows down, she observes, she softens, and if the ground holds, she stays quietly. All from female psyche.